Hi, my name is Joe Carvalho, and I'm a board member of the Samaritans of Fall River and New Bedford. I'm joined today by two volunteer guests. We have Ben and Annie, who both volunteer at the Samaritans of Fall River and New Bedford. The Samaritans provide a free and confidential suicide prevention and crisis hotline staffed by caring, trained volunteers available 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. The service provides unprejudiced and non-judgmental support to those who are alone, depressed, or in crisis. Anyone can find a caring, sympathetic ear at the Samaritans. And now, Ben, would you speak a little bit about the experiences and about the history of the Samaritans?
Absolutely. The thing that amazes me about the Samaritans is how out of tragedy something positive can happen, and also how seemingly the most random event can lead to having worldwide influence. And the Samaritans is an excellent example of that. And it was started in the United Kingdom in 1953 by a vicar in the Church of England named Chad Vera. And at this time in England, as strange as it appears to us today, suicide was a felony. And it wasn't that long ago. But Vera had officiated at the funeral of a 13-year-old girl who had completed suicide because she thought she had contracted an STD, when in actuality, she had merely started menstruating. And he was moved by the fact that if this child had had someone to speak to about this, her suicide could have been prevented. So recognizing a need for people to have someone to listen to within the community, he put out a call for volunteers, and the response was tremendous. And the volunteers would occupy those who were waiting to see him, where he would counsel them. But what he found was that while people were waiting to see him, they were what he termed befriended by the volunteers. And he noticed that this was having as great an impact as what he was doing in his counseling sessions. So he began to train everyone in these befriending techniques. And from that first unfortunate death, the Samaritans grew to become the international organization that it is today. And our local branch in Westport receives as many as 20,000 calls per year. And we do serve the areas of Fall River and New Bedford, their surrounding communities, as well as Cheverton and Little Compton. But we also, as Annie can tell you, receive calls from virtually all over the world, every corner of the earth. And that's basically how we came to be here. Our local branch started 33 years ago, right here in Fall River.
Great. Thank you for that, Ben.
You're welcome.
And Annie, please.
A typical day at Samaritans, the phone will ring, and we never know if it's going to be a suicidal call or someone that's lonely or depressed, or someone that just has something on their mind that maybe they've outworn their welcome with their family and friends, and they just need to get things off their chest, and it makes you really happy to be able to listen to them. And sometimes when they just kind of air their problems, they almost can find a solution by themselves. Or sometimes we can just say, well, have you thought about this? And they'll say, oh, that's a really good idea, da 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 da. And so we have some callers that are regular callers. They call every single day, sometimes several times a day, and they have no one. They sometimes they live alone and they're afraid to go out in the community, and they just need to hear a comforting voice. And also on Tuesdays I've been doing care calls, and this is for people that are shut-ins. We've gotten names from Bristol elders, and we talk to veterans. We talk to we have one lady that's blind. We have another man that was a grave digger, and we all walks of life. And it just sometimes they just want to talk about the Red Sox, or just that they're worried. About an upcoming doctor's appointment, whatever. But the care calls are a wonderful thing. And sometimes we have children that are living out of state, and they'll give us a call and they'll say, could you give my dad a phone call like once a week? I'm really worried about him. And we say, sure. And so we make a note and we call him once a week, or she, whatever. Another thing is that we have, as lots of you know, the returning veterans with the PTSD. When Barack Obama first took office, it was 16 per day we would lose to PTSD. And by the time he left office, it was up to 22 people a day. And sometimes we've been lucky enough, and they find it really hard to call, but when they do, they realize, well, why didn't I do this before? And they just need to, and we can give them phone numbers for veteran services that can help them, and they were not aware of. Another thing is with the rising opiate situation. I believe it was in 2016, in Massachusetts, we lost 2,069 young people to the opiate situation. And I believe it's one of the towns in west of Boston. They have signs on their lawns that say 2069, and that's what it means. It's the loss of young people to the opiate crisis. We have phone numbers to get help for that if people need help. So that's.
You want to mention a couple of those, or the numbers, the phone numbers?
I can give you our phone number, which is it's toll free. It's 866-508-4357. So if you can remember the 866 part, and then you remember the 508, like we all have the area code 508, and if you can remember the word help, which is 4357. So that's a good way to remember our number. And so, you might not be needing our services, but you might know someone that does. And if you could just slip the phone number on a little piece of paper and put it in their pocket, and maybe encourage them sometime to call us. And Safe Place, we have Safe Place for survivors. That's the first and third Wednesday of the month, and they meet at our center over in Westport. And we have a facilitator and other people that have lost a relative or a friend or a loved one to suicide that come. So.
Thank you for that, Annie. Yeah. Especially being a veteran myself of the Vietnam War, that kind of assistance is truly appreciated. Mm-hmm. And the numbers were astronomical of how many veterans have taken their own lives.
They suffered in silence,
yes,
because they didn't know of help that was out there. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Joe,
yes, Ben.
While we're on the topic of statistics, maybe I should point out that in recent years, more Massachusetts residents have completed suicide than died as a result of car accidents and homicides combined. Mm-hmm. Yet, despite that, we have one of the lowest suicide rates in the country, and we like to think that we're part of that. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, not only among veterans, but the suicide rate is rising among teenagers due to cyberbullying. Mm-hmm. And mass rates have doubled since 2004, and nationally, there were just under 40,000 suicides in 2016, and that number is somewhat lower than in previous years. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death, with 76% of those being males, and 57% of those fall within the 35 to 64 year age range. And suicide, for every suicide, there are 25 attempts, and it costs the nation $51 billion a year annually. So you can see it's something that really affects all of us at one level or another.
Sure. Annie, anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, we're going to have a walk in September on the 23rd. In fact, right here at Bristol Community College. They have
In Fall River.
In Fall River on Elsby Street. Did I
Yes,
pronounce
it
it right?
Ellsbury.
Ellsbury, oh, thank you.
Yep.
777 Ellsbury Street. And there's a beautiful pond that is kind of way out to our right. And that's where we're going to gather on that Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. And we invite you all to come and walk. If you can't walk, and I have a friend Gina that can't walk, and she has a cane, she's coming because we have a tailgate afterwards. And Dave will probably tell you why we have a tailgate, because last year, go take it away, Dave.
Oh, it was a terrible, terrible rainstorm, but we made the best of it and had a great time despite the weather. So we're ready to go, rain or shine.
Yes. Right.
Yeah, and if folks want to register to do the walk, the registration will begin at 8:30 on that Saturday morning, September 23rd. And the walk will actually start around the pond at approximately 9 a.m. So we're hoping for a tremendous turnout. And it's rain or shine.
Yes. Maybe
We
shine.
may even have umbrellas for folks, just in case it does.
Yeah.
So tell me about the training that goes in, because we are actually trying to get more volunteers, of course,
Yes.
for the Samaritans, people who would give a block of time, if you will, per week, to assist us in doing the work that we do. So whichever one of you, Ben or Annie, want to explain about the training?
Well,
and
the training is intensive for a weekend, for a Saturday and a Sunday, and then usually for maybe 4 hours on a Monday. Am I right, Dave?
Yes.
Ben?
Total of 35 hours at the end.
Right, right. And then they buddy up with a volunteer, and they learn how we answer the phones. And so when they have had their training, then they take one phone call at a time with the assistance of a volunteer with them, and little by little they get their wings and go on the phones by themselves. And when we're on the phones, we have a backup. We're not allowed to take any phone calls till we call a home leader. And the home leader is a person that if we get into a difficult phone call where maybe somebody needs a rescue sent, or we need some more information, or if we need a phone call to be traced, the home leader comes to our assistance, and they work with the police and the authorities to get help to a caller. And we don't just send rescue to people that are suicidal. Not too long ago, I had a veteran, and his daughter had looked up our number on the computer, and she gave, because we said Samaritans, she gave her dad our phone number. So he called, and I talked to him, and he was having difficulties he just didn't feel like himself. And so I asked him a few questions, and I could tell that he needed a little bit of help, but he didn't want to go to the hospital. So we agreed that maybe if I could call his local police department and they would do a wellness call, that would that be all right with him? And he said that would be fine. So I said to him, now I want you to tell them everything you told me. Just don't, when they come, just don't say, oh, everything's fine, because you need to just level with them. So anyway, so my home leader helped trace the phone call because he couldn't remember where he lived. And so we were able to send rescue to him, and they got him to get some help. So, and the poor man was all apologies. His daughter lived far away, and she had to go to work, and she had 2 small children. So, people, that's what we're there for. So think about it. If we can help, we would be very happy to help. So, it's just not suicides and depression, whatever. So.
Yes, Ben, please.
Yeah, one of the hallmarks of our organization is confidentiality. So we tell people when they call that we won't release any information to anyone they don't want us to. So in a case like Annie's talking about, this gentleman didn't know where he was and didn't know wanted help. And so we will use the police for that. But generally, we will not do anything without the caller's permission. So
Right.
we want everyone to be assured of that, and that everything they tell us is kept with us, between us, the caller and ourselves. And that seems to make a big difference for them. A lot of times there are issues that they don't want to discuss with anyone they know, and the anonymity
Right.
is very helpful to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
The care calls, especially too, in addition to taking calls, the outreach that we can provide, and I got personally involved in, and I'm a volunteer on the board of directors. So I haven't ever been in the situation of you two in taking calls, and I was asked by a friend, a very close friend for years, if being a veteran and having experienced PTSD at the time coming back from Vietnam, if I would consider becoming a board member. And I met with the executive director, Del Ferris, and she explained the program to me, and it didn't take me but less than a minute to decide that it was something that I would very much want to be a part of. And the care calls, so there was a veteran here in Fall River who had called Bristol Elders, and was feeling a bit down, and actually his biggest request was that he wanted to be able to see the movie Dunkirk. And so I got his name and phone number and his address. I gave him a call and explained who I was, a Vietnam veteran who lived in the city, and I understood that he wanted to see the movie. So I contacted the Swansea Mall, I got the tickets, I called him back, said we're ready to go on a Friday. I had his apartment number, I went to the place, I went into his apartment, and he had pictures on the mantle of him when he enlisted into the Marines. And of course he was 17 or 18 at the time. He's now 84. And as I was looking at the photographs, I saw a small box just to his right, just to the right of his picture, and it had 5 rows of medals, the ribbons that they give you to wear instead of the medals. And I noticed that the top one was a silver star. And then I saw the Bronze Star with a V for Valor, and a Purple Heart, and many others. So, I mean, I have an understanding, having been in a war, and this gentleman was a Korean War veteran and a Marine. I was Army. And when I did further research on the awards, it's for valor, it's for gallantry, it's for saving the lives of your fellow soldiers. Just incredible. And he, when I said, wow, Mr. So-and-so, I said, this is just amazing to me. And having been in war, I can understand some of that. The sacrifice and the courage and the heroism that he displayed, and it just moved me tremendously. And of course, when I said that to him, he was like, look, this is what we do. This is, you're given a job to do, and you do it, and hopefully you survive, and hopefully you save some of your friends' lives as well. And years ago they did a study about asking World War II vets, what was it that got you through the day, and it said was helping my fellow soldiers, a family, and country, in that order.
Beautiful.
And it's just it was just amazing. Got to take him to the movie, to Dunkirk, and I'm still in touch with him.
Oh, good.
And we're planning on going to lunch and those kinds of things. So a wonderful experience that came out of a care call, really. So anything else, Ben, that you'd like to share?
Can I add to that?
Oh,
Excuse
yes,
me.
please, Annie.
I was lucky to have talked to him on the care call, and I asked him if he'd heard of the movie Dunkirk, and he said yes, and he said, do you know the story? So he told me the story, and it was so beautiful about how all these little boats came from England over to France, and they took their chances with being shot at by the Germans, but some of the boats could take 8 people, some could take 20, but these people did not give up, and that's what his point to me was afterwards. He said, back in those days, he said, people worked together. And we all need to take a lesson from that. And one other thing I learned from this caller, he gets Meals on Wheels Monday through Friday. He doesn't eat on Saturday or Sunday because Meals on Wheels thinks that the family will take care of things over the weekend. Well, his wife's in a nursing home and his daughter is in California. So we need to make improvements on Meals on Wheels. So if anybody out there can help, please. So,
One of the other things I'd like to mention, in addition to what Annie was saying about care calls, we also participate in health fairs, and all of our training and everything is free. And we can only do that because of the fundraiser that we're having and the support of the United Way of Fall River and the United Way of New Bedford. They're vital to keeping our phones working. So we're grateful to them.
Yes, excellent point.
And while we're talking about training, we do have a training coming up September 9th. If anyone's interested, we would love to hear from you.
Yeah, we can never have enough volunteers.
and the phone number is 866-508-4357. Thank you.
Great. Anything else you'd like to let people, folks know about our group?
Well, going back to the post PTSD and losing 22 veterans a day, if you picture if 22 a day times 10 is 220, and if you put those 220 veterans in a Southwest airplane and it crashed, maybe our government would do something about this for the veterans. It's gotten a little better because some generals have lost some sons to PTSD, but more work needs to be done. And and even going back to former wars. And I've heard of instances where people were just fine for years after Vietnam. I heard of one case where a man went back to Kansas and was in a cornfield and he took his own life because it just, you never know when it's going to show up. So please. Yep. Yeah.
Yes, back in the day it was referred to as shell shock, or I forget what other terms they used, but it really is post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes.
Anything else, Ben?
The only other thing I'd like to mention is that it's so vital for our shifts to be covered so that people in need, if they do call, that someone is there to answer the phones. And we do get a lot of students from the local colleges, UMass, BCC, Bridgewater, Stonehill, and we're grateful to them. But we would also welcome anyone else of any age, retired people. We'd love to have them. I'm one myself. So the need is out there.
Yes, definitely.
And when you leave after you do your shift, you feel like $1 million. Even if you help one person, it's a wonderful feeling. It really is.
And you won't work with a nicer group of people.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
True.
Yes. Yes.
And don't forget that we have a walk coming up on Saturday, September the 23rd, right here at the Fall River campus of Bristol Community College. Registration will begin at 8:30, and the walk will begin at 9 o'clock. Everyone is welcomed. It's a rain or shine event. We will have umbrellas just in case. But we're kind of planning that it's going to be rain-free this year, because last year, as Ben and Annie mentioned, it rained. So any closing remarks, Annie or Ben?
Well, in addition to the walk, we have a really, because of last year in the rain, our theme is tailgate. So please come join us. Yes.
And Annie gave the number for our center, but if for some reason anyone watching this had a need and our center was not open, it was after our hours, the national line is 800-273-8255. I'll say it again, 800-273-8255.
Yes.
Great. Well, I want to thank you, Annie and Ben,
Thank you, John.
for being on the show, and actually asking for support for the Samaritans. There isn't a more worthwhile group of people or a more worthwhile agency than the Samaritans, in my humble opinion. You know, there isn't a statistic for how many people have been saved because of a call to us, or one of our care calls, for that matter, as the gentleman you spoke about, Annie. So please, to the listening audience, to the viewing audience, whatever you feel you can do to support the Samaritans, please don't hesitate. It's, as I said again, the most worthwhile agency I've ever been involved with.